The Beautiful Rose. It wasn't long before I got a new friend. Not that I'd ever forget my pet lamb, of course, and nothing ever could make up for him going to Hull Market to be killed. But I did find a very different sort of friend on our farm. The first I knew of him was when I heard him breathing. I was playing in our stackyard on my own. I could hear somebody behind our straw stack, and I tiptoed to the edge and peeped round. It was a tramp, and he was just like a bundle of rags slumped against our yellow bales. He looked so ugly and dirty in his torn clothes and his old cracked boots. His cap seemed to grow from his head with bits of black hair sprouting through it. I watched him and listened to his breathing in secret, not daring to breathe myself in case he heard me. But then I coughed by accident, and the tramp bundle moved. I could see his black, darting eyes. I jumped back, but it was too late. "Hello, my beauty!" He smiled at me, and the skin on his face cracked into old leather like his boots, and I could see big gaps, even bigger than mine, in his bad teeth. I wasn't sure that I should go near him, but he kept on smiling, and then he beckoned me over with his grubby hand. Gradually I crept round our bales and stood in front of him in the straw. He smiled again. "Nice to see you, my beauty," he said. I didn't know what to do. I watched him chewing on nothing and licking his dry lips. And then I had an idea. I ran off to our pantry and I got some cheese and put it between some bread. I got a mug of water and ran back to our stackyard. As I ran, some of the water spilled and slapped down my dress. And then I gripped the Sammy. "Say sandwich," said Mam, but I always forgot. My fingers sank into the soft bread, making it mushy. It was all of a mess. But when I got back to my tramp, you would have thought I'd brought him a feast. His eyes lit up when he saw me. He glugged the water down, then he held the squashy, doughy lump to his mouth, and in a flash it was gone. I sat down on the straw, hoping he would talk to me, but he just smiled and then fell asleep, and I crept slowly away. After that, he slept in our bales every night. During the day, he went tramping the roads to find a bit of casual work in exchange for some food. He called it meat for work. Then he came back to sleep in our straw, and he was always so pleased to see me. He told me about his day and the bits of work that he had done, and I used to tell him what had happened to me, and he just listened so carefully when I talked and smiled all the time. I didn't tell anybody about my new friend because I was sure that Mam would think a tramp was not a good friend to have. You see, she would think that he could not help me get on in the world. To do that, she thought that your clothes had to be smart, and you certainly had to have clean clothes and speak properly. Mam wanted me to mix with people like Helen or Auntie Cecily from down south, who had all the things she thought I needed. My tramp was not at all like them, so I kept quiet. Nowadays, I was secretly relying on my list of things that I was good at to get me on in the world, so it didn't matter if my friend was dirty. And as I got to know him, it was funny, but I didn't think he was ugly anymore, and I didn't bother about his dirty old clothes. All I looked for was his kindly smile, and I liked how he listened when I talked to him. He was a good friend to me, as good as my pet lamb had been, and that was what I wanted. Then one day, not long after finding my tramp, something else happened that I'd always wanted. You see, Irene asked me to be her bridesmaid. I'd always wanted to be a bridesmaid. It would be so exciting. Mum would be making my dress, of course, and I didn't mind not going to the shops to buy clothes now, because I'd learnt my lesson with my pet lamb, who had to die to pay for my new red coat. I decided I would never ever grumble about Mum making my clothes again. Mum knew Irene from Ringham, and we didn't have to call her Auntie like we had to call Auntie Cecily. Maybe it was because she wasn't posh. Her hair was permed into tight, fuzzy curls like Mum, not big, soft curls like Auntie Cecily's. And her gums showed bright red when she smiled. And another thing was that her teeth stuck out, and her lips had to go all tight and thin when they closed round her mouth. Irene was not beautiful. Maybe Irene chose me because I wasn't beautiful either. For one thing, I had that gap in my teeth, which was so big that I could fit Auntie Dilly's farthing there. And another thing was that my hair was so thin after my poisoning when I was a baby. Anyway, it wasn't long after that I knew about being a bridesmaid. Irene came to talk with Mum about the big day. They couldn't stop discussing materials and headdresses and flowers, and I couldn't stop thinking that it would be my very own big day. And to make it my big day, I had to look good. In fact, I had to look beautiful. And it was there and then that I promised myself that I would be the most beautiful person at that wedding. I could add that to my what I'm good at list. I would be good at being beautiful. And I knew there was a lot of work to be done before then. First, there was my dress. Mum had, of course, used up all Auntie Cecily's lovely material from London. In fact, she had used all the material about a week after it arrived. So there was nothing for it but for us to go to Ripsey and the remnant shop. All three of us went, Irene, Mum and me, on the bus. But when we got there, I was disappointed because he started looking for material for Irene's dress first. She was going to make her own dress out of white material. At least that was one good thing. She wasn't going to wear brown like Auntie Peggy did for her wedding. They turned the shop upside down, and they were ages, but at last they found some white silk, which Mum said would be good. So that was finally decided on. And then I hoped to look for my material next because I was getting fed up. But no, it was Mum's turn. They started looking for some material for her costume. In the end, they chose some navy blue, which was a bargain because it turned out to be linen. She always chose navy blue. It must have been her favourite colour. At last, now it was my turn, but they were all tired by now, and the scraps of material were all over the shop, and the assistant had gone backstage to get a mug of tea. I ended up with some ordinary blue, which Mum said she could make into a nice dress. I must say I was a bit disappointed. I had imagined that I would have silk like Irene, or linen like Mum. But no, mine was just ordinary cotton. So that was the end of that, and we went back home on the bus. Irene got off at Ringham, and we went on to the end to Gum. I was hoping that Mam would start to make my dress straight away. But when we got back, she changed into her work clothes and went out to help Dad with milking because he had already brought the cows up from Bottom Field. My old blue material was just dumped in its brown carrier bag on our stone floor.